Space Ghost Daily on location at Jetty Park at the Malcolm E. McLouth Fishing Pier, dedicated September the 22nd, 1995, named in honor of Commissioner Mac McLouth for his 30 years of dedication to recreational enhancements and environmental improvements at Port Canaveral. There's a picture of Mac with the young boy on the fishing pier. Mac, we're actually here with the man today, Mac McLouth. Mac is a candidate, Republican candidate for the Port Commission. Mac, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Tell us about this important issue that you wanted to bring to the attention of our viewers.
Well, one of the main things that we have to do at the port is maintain the channel. Without the channel, we can't get the ships in and out, and so that's a very important issue. Unfortunately, the channel is man-made, and of course it shoals up with sand, and so that's a big problem. And so in a combination of the Corps of Engineers and the state of Florida and the Port Authority, why we maintain this channel on a regular basis. Obviously the Navy also is interested in it, so the federal government has two strong interests in maintaining this.
So the channel, as you can see behind Mac McLouth, is a beautiful wide channel. It's where the big cruise ships come in. We just saw one of the big roll-on, roll-off car carriers coming through here, and behind Mac you see the fishing pier, the Malcolm McLouth fishing pier, that's used a lot out here, all the way out about 800 or so, 900 feet out. Now Mac, tell us about the importance of this current program where people see these dredges offshore pumping sand onto the beaches. Tell us about the importance of that.
Well, the importance of that, of course, is, and there was a long lawsuit in regards to the maintenance of the beaches south of the channel. So as a result of this, the federal government is obligated to provide a dredging of the and nourishment of the beaches that erode south of the channel.
Okay.
And on the picture down here, you can see this. This picture was 1967. You can see that the differences of the erosion to the south of the inlet here. This is the north side, and this is the south side. You can see that it erodes south and is not re-nourished because what happens is the sand is deposited offshore because the channel in the tide is shooting offshore or it's shooting on into the channels here, and so it either deposits here or there, and so it never gets over to the other side. So as a result of that, they have to maintain that channel. But the erosion to the south, then the sand never gets there. So as a result of that, that's what happens. That's why they need the assistance.
And here we have another interesting image. Mac, tell us about this one.
This one shows the Trident turning basin being dredged in 1994, and they deposited a large amount of sand to the south along the south beaches, which was a big benefit. They killed two birds with one stone.
We're here today with Mac McLouth. Mac, tell us a little bit about the plaque you're holding. I know you're proud of that, of your efforts on the Florida beaches and shores preservation.
Well, I spent several years working with the Florida Beach and Shores Preservation Society. They're a very prestigious group out of Tallahassee, and they gave me an award for working with the Corps of Engineers and the state to maintain these inlet management plans. We were the first ones to do it. We have maintained ours religiously. It's a big group. It's an honor that I achieved in 2004.
Well, folks, as you walk up and down the beautiful beaches of Brevard County and see those wide beaches, just remember that Port Canaveral has this important plan to continue to move the sand offshore onto the beaches, to re-nourish the beaches. And Mac, we want to thank you for your service and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
We're here at Mac McLouth Fishing Pier. Mac, as people walk up and down the beaches, sometimes in the fall and the winter, we see these dredges offshore pumping sand out into the beach and doing all that. Tell us actually how that process works.
Well, it happens about every 3 to 5 years, depending on the real need for it. But basically what it is that the dredges They look like boats, which are ships, and they have the ability to store sand in the hole, and then they pick it up off the south end of the cape. It's out to sea, maybe 4 or 5 miles, and they pick that sand up that's been deposited as the sand moves south from North Carolina, South Carolina, into Florida, Georgia, and it just drops up out there. So they pick it up. It's a heavier sand. It's a larger sand size, so it doesn't. It stays on the beach longer. So they pick it up off there and bring it in and pump it on the beaches.
Well, Mac, obviously it's a very expensive undertaking to do all that dredging and moving of sand every 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, depending on the storms. Tell us, how the money flows on that. How does that actually happen, and how do we continue to make sure we get what we need here in Brevard County?
Well, Port Canaveral has an inlet management plan with the state. It's a management plan that was approved by the state. As a matter of fact, the first one that was approved in the state of Florida. And so we move that, we have to fund that. And so we also have to work with the county, because the county it's the county beaches south of our deal that are affected, of course, of our inlet. And so they're involved in financing of some of that, maintenance of that, but to a very smaller degree. The big money comes from the Corps of Engineers, because they got to maintain this for the nuclear submarines. So that plus the state of Florida, which is a big donor of money for the sand transfer. So all these, the 3 main sources are the port, the state, and the federal government.
Now, how do we ensure that that continues to get funded? Obviously, there's a budget in D.C. How do we make sure that money goes into the budget and continues to flow to fund these important beach re-nourishment projects?
Well, the Corps has the obligation. We have a 50-year plan, and probably about 10 years has expired already, of maintaining this channel for the next, say, 40 years now. And they'll put that in the budget, and they'll get authorization to do it. Then the big problem is, did they allocate money for it? Did Congress allocate money for it? Just because they got an obligation doesn't mean it happens. So that's where the rubber hits the road right there.
Okay, so as a port commissioner, should you be chosen by the people to once again be a port commissioner, you're running for office, what would you expect to do to help make sure that Congress, actual money gets moved and this re-nourishment happens?
Well, it's to call on our friends, our congressmen from here, our senators, to make sure that the funding does get in the budget to do that re-nourishment. It may be delayed for a year if we don't work on it religiously.
So obviously, once again, we're at the Malcolm E. McLouth Fishing Pier. We're standing in the channel, right off to the channel here. Mac has explained the history a little bit about the beach re-nourishment and why this happens every year. Right to your legislatures, Mac, what other message do you have for folks out here as they get ready for to vote in the primary?
Well, the big issue is we need people with experience on the commission itself. We're losing an individual that has had a lot of experience, done a good job, but now I need to replace this gentleman, and so that we can keep a steady hand. And I anticipate that I'll hit the ground running. I won't need a couple years, 2 or 3 years, because right now we've got 2 or 3 people on the commission that have only been here for a year and a half, and that's not enough time.